Welcome to ML 5.3.1, Right Thing Built, Validating Requirements Against Business Value. We are still in requirements analysis and design definition, and in this lesson we move to Task 5.3, Validate Requirements. In the last lesson, verification confirmed the requirements are built right. In this lesson we ask the harder question, are they actually the right requirements? That is what validation does, and the distinction between the two tasks is one of the most precisely tested points in the entire curriculum. Let us get into it. The PDIG-4U requirements package has passed verification. 47 requirements, testable, unambiguous, internally consistent, all 9 characteristics satisfied. The business analyst moves to the validation session with the project sponsor and 2 senior stakeholders from the Lambert Inc. finance and operations groups. 3 things surface within the first hour. None of them were visible during verification. The first, a requirement specifying that the dashboard must display a rolling 12-month trend line for each cost center's utility expenditure. Nobody in the room can trace it back to a business objective. The project's stated goal is to reduce ad hoc finance data requests by 60%. Utility expenditure trend lines are not mentioned in the business case, the future state description, or the solution scope. The requirement is well written. It passed verification, but nobody can explain why it is in this solution. The second, a requirement that the platform must allow regional operations managers to export raw data extracts in comma-separated format. The operations stakeholder confirms it would be genuinely useful. The sponsor notes that operations managers were not in the original solution scope. The platform was designed for center managers and senior executives. The requirement benefits a real stakeholder, but it is not within the boundaries of the agreed solution. The third, the requirement that automated data consolidation will reduce manual finance team effort by 70%. That figure has been in the requirements set since the beginning. Nobody in the room can confirm where it came from. There is no baseline measurement of current manual effort. There is no analysis behind the figure. It is an assumption, and it has been driving prioritization decisions for 8 weeks. Verification said the requirements are built right. Validation asks whether they are the right requirements. That is an entirely different question, and that is Task 5.3, Validate Requirements. The shift from verification to validation is a shift in the question being asked. Verification asks, are these requirements well constructed? Are they testable, unambiguous, consistent, and complete? Those are quality checks the business analyst and technical reviewers can answer by examining the requirements themselves. Validation asks something harder. Do these requirements actually reflect what the business needs? Will implementing them deliver the value stakeholders are expecting? Are they aligned to the business objectives that justified this initiative in the first place? Those questions cannot be answered by examining the requirements alone. They require the involvement of stakeholders who can confirm whether what has been specified is what they actually need. Requirements validation is an ongoing process, not a one-time gate at the end of specification. It runs throughout the analysis work, because the earlier a misaligned requirement is caught, the less costly it is to correct. A misalignment found during validation is a removal and a log entry. The same misalignment discovered after design and development is a scope change, a rebuild, and a cost that compounds. The overall goal of implementing requirements is to achieve the stakeholders' desired future state. Validation is the process that confirms requirements actually point there, not just that they are well written, but that they describe the right destination. Stakeholders often have different, sometimes conflicting needs and expectations. Those conflicts frequently only surface through validation, because it is the first moment when stakeholders from different groups are in the same conversation, comparing what they each believe the solution will deliver. That is one of the reasons validation is valuable, beyond checking individual requirements. It is often the moment when misalignment between stakeholder groups becomes visible and can be resolved before design or development begins. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to do 5 things. You will be able to explain the purpose of Task 5.3 and articulate clearly what makes it distinct from verification, not just in definition, but in the question it asks, the stakeholders it involves, and when it can and cannot be completed relative to verification. You will be able to apply the 3 elements that structure the validation task, identifying assumptions and linking them to risk management, defining measurable evaluation criteria using baseline and target metrics, and evaluating alignment with solution scope, including what the correct response is when a requirement benefits a stakeholder but sits outside the agreed boundaries. You will know all 7 techniques that support validation: acceptance and evaluation criteria, document analysis, financial analysis, item tracking, metrics and key performance indicators, reviews, and risk analysis and management. You will understand the formal sequencing rule for this task, that validation activities may begin before verification is complete, but cannot be completed before verification is done. And you will be ready to answer both exam patterns in this task area confidently. The verify versus validate distinction question, where the key is recognizing which phrases belong to which task, and the scope alignment question, where a requirement benefits a stakeholder, but the correct action is to remove it from the solution scope. Validate requirements is task 5.3 in requirements analysis and design definition. Its purpose is to ensure that all requirements and designs align to the business requirements and support the delivery of needed value. The task has one input: requirements that have been specified and modeled. There is an important sequencing rule. Validation activities may begin before requirements are completely verified, because early validation can surface alignment issues before the full specification is complete. However, validation activities cannot be completed before requirements are completely verified. Both checks must be done, and verification must finish before validation can be finalized. The task produces one output: requirements that have been validated, confirmed as aligned to business objectives and within solution scope. 3 elements structure the work. The first element is identify assumptions. Organizations launching unprecedented products or services may need to make assumptions about how stakeholders will respond, because there are no similar previous experiences to draw on. Stakeholders may also have assumed that certain benefits will result from implementing a requirement, without that assumption being grounded in evidence or measurement. Validation surfaces these assumptions explicitly. Once identified and documented, they are linked to risk management, because an assumption that proves false is a risk to value delivery. The second element is define measurable evaluation criteria. While expected benefits are typically defined as part of the future state, the specific criteria for measuring whether those benefits have been achieved are often not included. Validation requires the business analyst to define how success will be measured after the solution is implemented. This means establishing a baseline, the current state measurement before the solution goes live, and a target, the performance level that confirms the business objective has been achieved. Without measurable evaluation criteria, there is no way to confirm after implementation whether the solution delivered what it was supposed to. The third element is evaluate alignment with solution scope. A requirement can be of benefit to a stakeholder and still not be a desirable part of this solution. For each requirement, the business analyst confirms that it aligns with the business objectives justifying the initiative, delivers benefit to a stakeholder within the agreed scope, and sits within the solution scope boundaries. A requirement that does not deliver benefit to any stakeholder is a strong candidate for elimination. When a requirement benefits a stakeholder but sits outside the agreed scope, the correct action is to remove it from the current solution scope, not to add it because the benefit exists. Validation matters because verification alone is not sufficient to confirm that requirements will deliver what the business actually needs. A requirement can be perfectly written, atomic, complete, consistent, concise, feasible, unambiguous, testable, prioritized, and understandable, and still describe the wrong thing. It can be traceable to a stakeholder conversation but not traceable to a business objective. It can benefit a real person but sit outside the agreed scope of this solution. It can embed an assumption about expected value that has never been confirmed with evidence. Verification would not catch any of those. Validation does. The 2 exam patterns in this task area test 2 specific and distinct points. The first pattern tests the verify versus validate distinction. The exam will describe a business analysis activity and ask which task is being performed. The distinguishing language is precise and consistent. Verification is the task that ensures requirements and design specifications, and models meet quality standards and are usable for the purpose they serve. The signal phrases are quality standards and fitness for use, or usable to guide further work. Validation is the task that ensures requirements align to business requirements and support the delivery of needed value. The signal phrases are alignment to business requirements and delivery of value. When the question describes checking whether requirements are well written, testable, and meet quality standards, that is verification. When it describes confirming whether requirements align to business objectives or will deliver expected benefit, that is validation. Those 2 descriptions will never be confused if the phrases are locked in. The second pattern tests the scope alignment rule. The exam will describe a requirement that benefits a real stakeholder. The sponsor may even agree it is a good idea, but that sits outside the agreed solution scope. The question asks what the business analyst should do. The correct answer is to remove the requirement from the solution scope. Benefit to a stakeholder is not sufficient for inclusion. Alignment with the agreed solution scope is the determining factor. The exam will offer options that sound reasonable. Add it because it delivers benefit. Escalate it to the project manager. defer it pending financial analysis. All of those miss the core principle. Scope determines inclusion, not stakeholder benefit alone. Here are the 5 steps that apply Task 5.3 from initiation to validated output. Step 1. Confirm readiness to validate. Validation activities may begin before requirements are fully verified, but they cannot be completed until verification is done. Before finalizing any validation decisions, confirm the verification status of the requirements being reviewed. This sequencing rule exists because validating a requirement that is still ambiguous or internally inconsistent can produce unreliable validation outcomes. Step 2. Identify and document assumptions. Review the requirements set systematically for embedded assumptions, places where an expected benefit has been assumed rather than confirmed, or where stakeholder behavior, system performance, or business response has been taken as given without evidence. Document each assumption explicitly. For each one, assess the risk associated with it. If this assumption proves false, what is the impact on value delivery? Link each surfaced assumption to the risk register so it can be tracked and managed. Step 3. Define measurable evaluation criteria. For each key requirement and each expected benefit, define how success will be measured after the solution is implemented. Establish the baseline, the current state measurement that will serve as the reference point. Define the target, the performance level that confirms the business objective has been achieved. Make both specific and measurable. Without this, there is no way to confirm after implementation whether the solution delivered its intended value. The baseline and target together are what make a benefit claim more than an assumption. Step 4. Evaluate alignment with solution scope. For each requirement in the set, confirm 3 things: that it aligns with the business objectives justifying the initiative, that it delivers benefit to a stakeholder within the agreed scope, and that it sits within the solution scope boundaries. A requirement that cannot be traced to a business objective is a candidate for elimination. A requirement that benefits a stakeholder outside the agreed scope is removed from the current solution. It may be documented as a future enhancement, but it does not belong in this solution. If a design cannot be validated to support a requirement, either something is missing from the requirement, or the design must change. Step 5. Resolve issues and produce the output. Track every flagged requirement using item tracking. Facilitate resolution with the appropriate stakeholders, whether that means a rewrite, a removal, a deferral, or a scope change conversation with the sponsor. Requirements that pass the validation process are confirmed as validated, aligned to business requirements, within scope, with measurable criteria defined, and ready for approval. Pause and think. The PDIG-4U requirement set includes a requirement that the platform must allow regional operations managers to export raw data extracts in comma-separated format. The operations stakeholder confirms it would be genuinely useful. The sponsor confirms operations managers are outside the agreed solution scope. Applying Element 3 of Task 5.3. What is the correct outcome, and why? 7 techniques support the validation task. Acceptance and evaluation criteria. In validation, this technique is used to define the quality metrics that must be met to achieve stakeholder acceptance of the solution. Acceptance criteria make the expected benefit of a requirement concrete and measurable. They define what success looks like in terms the stakeholder can confirm. A requirement whose benefit cannot be described in terms of specific acceptance conditions is a candidate for assumption surfacing, because the expected benefit has likely never been defined precisely enough to be confirmed. Document analysis. This technique is used to identify previously documented business needs in order to validate requirements against them. Reviewing the business case, future state description, and solution scope document allows the business analyst to trace each requirement back to its stated justification. If a requirement cannot be traced to a documented business need, as happened with the utility expenditure trendline in PDIG-4U, its alignment with the initiative is in question, and it becomes a candidate for removal. Financial analysis. This technique is used to define and quantify the financial benefits associated with specific requirements. When the expected benefit of a requirement is expressed in financial terms, cost reduction, revenue increase, processing efficiency gain, financial analysis provides the method for developing that figure and confirming it is grounded in analysis rather than assumption. It is also used to evaluate whether an assumed benefit is realistic, given the costs of the change. Item tracking. This technique ensures that any problems or issues identified during validation are managed and resolved. When a requirement is flagged as misaligned, out of scope, or based on an unconfirmed assumption, item tracking provides the structured mechanism for recording the issue, assigning it to the appropriate person, monitoring progress toward resolution, and confirming closure before the requirement set moves forward. Metrics and key performance indicators. This technique translates abstract expected benefits into specific, measurable performance targets that can be tracked after implementation. Metrics connect the validation conversation to the post-implementation evaluation. They are what make it possible to confirm, months after go live, whether the solution delivered what was promised. Reviews. Reviews are the primary mechanism through which requirements are confirmed, as aligned to business value. Structured validation sessions with the project sponsor, domain subject matter experts, and end users allow stakeholders to confirm that the requirements as written reflect what they actually need. Reviews may expose conflicts between stakeholder groups, cases where two groups approve different, incompatible solutions to the same business problem that can only be resolved through facilitated discussion. Risk analysis and management. When assumptions are surfaced during validation, risk analysis determines the likelihood and impact of those assumptions proving false and develops appropriate risk responses. This is what transforms a list of assumptions into an actionable risk register entry, giving the team visibility into which assumed benefits carry the most risk and what would happen to value delivery if they turned out to be wrong.